Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of House of the Dragon Season 1, Episode number 9. There we go. Held up the right amount of fingers. The penultimate episode of this season. A lot happened in this episode, and even a couple things that I legitimately did not see coming.
Yeah, I mean, there was no Rhaenyra in this episode, no Daemon in this episode, and I mean, we knew that they weren't there, but just the same, when everything was kind of happening, I thought that they would have made their way back, but I mean, clearly nobody told them the king is dead yet.
It's a very, I think, interesting way that the show's being structured here at the end of this season, because, it seems like the finale will be more about the Rhaenyra and Daemon side of things, and we're kind of getting to know both aspects of where this potential showdown is heading.
Yeah, because now we have definite sane person Aegon on the throne. This is going to be like, a nightmare for everyone.
Definite sane person.
Wow.
That needs to be the title. We need to add that to first second of his name or whatever of his name it was. Definite sane person. Well, before we talk about all the sane and insane people in this episode, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We don't want you guys to miss our take on the big finale. Everything else that is also presumably coming in this Game of Thrones universe. At this point, they might as well give Kit Harington $1 billion to do the Jon Snow show.
Yep, we're also going to be covering American Horror Story. We've got Raising Kanan here. There's still one more episode of that we got here at the channel. So hit that subscribe button and follow us over on Instagram, Matt and Jess TV.
Okay, I'm just gonna try to take everybody inside my brain here for a moment. I promise it's not that crazy for the end of this episode, because we're all watching this coronation ceremony happen for Aegon, the prince who was never promised, and he's getting crowned and all this. And I know we all know Game of Thrones, so we're all thinking, okay, when is something bad gonna happen? How is something bad going to happen? And then just Rhaenys and the dragon come in like the Kool-Aid man, being like, oh yeah, at the end of and this freaking gave me a heart attack. I don't know why I didn't see that specific thing coming, but I really did not. Even when the dragon first showed up, I kind of thought it was Rhaenyra at first.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what she was going to do at that point. And I know that she had that talk with Alicent where she was kind of like, haven't you ever thought about yourself being on the throne? I mean, you always have all these men around you that are all just manipulating you, down to some weird foot stuff that's going on, where I was just like, why is she doing this? She doesn't need to do this. She doesn't need to do a lot of what she's doing. And there was that moment where I was like, oh, she's just going to torch everybody. Here we go. Yeah. And I mean, obviously she can't do that and then just put Rhaenyra on the throne, because then there's no more show, right? But it was an interesting sort of decision when the two women looked at each other and then we saw her turn around and fly out.
Yeah, I think this is something that's going to lead to a lot of discussion over the next few days on it. Just my own personal just tinfoil hat theory on this is pretty simple. It's just that I think Rhaenys knows how delicate things are in Westeros all across the board. And, people who tend to be attacked and face the greatest retaliations are the people who are the primary instigators in all of this. And I do think personally, for at least a split second, she probably contemplated, do I torch this whole situation? And I think in the end, she sort of realized this is more about Rhaenyra and Alicent than this necessarily is about me. I want to send this very clear sign that I'm here, that I'm capable of doing a lot of this sort of stuff, but I think she also needs to be sort of amenable to whatever plays out here. She doesn't want to make Driftmark into just a giant ruin where everyone comes right at her for revenge.
Of course, she can't just kill the king and fly out and everything's going to be A-okay. I mean, he's been king for a minute.
Yeah.
Definite sane person, King Aegon. Oh my goodness. Learning more about him, I mean, we all knew that he was just a mess and that he's not a great person. He's done some pretty horrible things. But seeing this, I'm not going to repeat exactly, because could barely get through seeing some of the things that he was into with the kids, with who looked like his own kids. I assumed that that's where they were kind of pushing that narrative, that this was like, oh, here's an offspring of his that is now going to be in this whole, we'll call it a circle of awful. Like, it was so bad. And we've seen a lot of really dark things on this show, but I'm having a hard time like really reaching into the back of my mind of like, is there anything that was as dark as this, plus your own kid in this, and you're there watching this, and now you're the king? I was just like really thinking about it, where I was like, okay, why does the council really want someone who is so uncontrollable on the throne? Because like the council wants to be able, wants power. He wants to be able to keep going. Everyone at the council wants power. You can't control Aegon. There just isn't any controlling him. And they may think that there is some sort of way that he could be a little bit malleable, but they are wrong. And I know that they don't all know about this other part, but there are now people that do. And I think everybody's setting themselves up for like a really giant fail. Not only does he not want this and has said, I don't want this, even, pleaded to his brother, put me on a boat. You'll never see me again. Yeah. You can have this. Goodbye. And he got dragged back. So we have a king who doesn't want this, who is not sane.
Yes.
Who does terrible things and cannot be controlled. And it's just such a weird spot that this council would want to put themselves in.
The thing that I have the hardest time understanding about a lot of this, and you guys can talk with me about this in the comments if you want, but it's just that Alicent would hear these final words from Viserys, which she takes to mean that, okay, Aegon is the prince who was promised, he's meant to be up on, and she knows her son better than anyone. Like, how could she think that Aegon could be capable of any of this? I understand she's probably wanting to hear what she heard, and she's probably trying to interpret it in her own way because this is her son. So she's probably going to look at some things maybe through more of a rose-colored glass than a lot of other people would. But at the same time, she already directly saw earlier this season some of the despicable stuff that Aegon has done. Like, she knows fully, eyes wide open, even with the rose-colored glasses on, she knows who this guy is. And I have a very hard time sort of reconciling all of this instead of just trying to, I don't know, twist the narrative, twist the politics, let Aemon be king, ship off Aegon somewhere else. Aemon seems to be doing all the right things.
Yeah, here's the thing. With the last episode where she was the last person to speak to him, I originally thought that she was hearing what she wanted to hear, that she, might just be like, oh yeah, you want my son on the throne. With this episode, and then kind of really thinking back, she does know who her son is. She knows he's not capable of being on the throne. She has said multiple times that she backs Rhaenyra. She's never really said, I know you guys are going to think I'm defending Alicent. I'm not. I'm just kind of getting into her head here. Yeah. She's never really been like, I want my son on the throne. That's never really been a thing that she has said. She's mostly just been a loyalist to the king and what he wants. So even though she was terrible to Rhaenyra about her children and made her make that walk after she gave birth, it never really felt like it was about the actual Iron Throne. It was more about, just the kids and whose kids they were. But for Alicent, I don't think she ever really wanted her son on the throne because she knows that he's a terrible person. He's done some awful things. She doesn't even know the extent. She knows he doesn't want it, and she knows he's not capable and that he will not listen to the people around him. So even if he was kind of a crappy king, a crappy king can still, rule decently if you have a good support group around you, because it takes, a village to run a kingdom kind of thing. It's not just sort of the king and that's it. If the king can be controlled, and she knows that he can't.
Yeah.
So in this particular episode, there seemed to be a lot more of that. Like, even when she was repeating it to her dad, the king told me this right before he died, and I was the only person in the room. But like the way she was talking about it, she was talking about it in disbelief. That's what I got from the actress, and the way that she played that there was like she doesn't have to pretend with her dad. So there felt like there was a real, like, I can't believe he said this to me, but this is what he said to me. So I guess this is where we are, because whatever the king wants is what the king should have. I've been his loyal wife. I've been loyal to him this whole time. I'm not going to take his dying words that he changed his mind and then just be like, bah, even though I know my son is not capable.
Here's some advice then for Alicent Hightower. It's okay to be like, blah, just because you hear something, just because you do something, it doesn't mean if it's for the greater good, you don't always have to admit it. It's just sort of like, you don't have to admit what you heard about Viserys. No, there were no witnesses. He's gonna suck at being a king. I mean, it's Viserys the Peaceful. They mentioned that a few times. Do you really want to follow that up with Aegon the Awful or Aegon the, what did you say?
Definite sane person.
Yeah. Do you really want that for your kingdom? You absolutely cannot.
I think the problem is that she realized after she had told her father, that the council was going to put him on the throne anyways. Like, as she was sort of at this council meeting, she even said, she was like, you guys were going to do this regardless of what he said. You guys already had a plan put together already. So it truly didn't matter what she said.
The thing that's the most curious to me long-term with everybody at King's Landing right now is this idea that Otto sort of has his own legion of spies that are floating around out there. And as much as I love the entire scene with Larys and Alicent and the feed, I was just like, no, please make it stop. It was important information for us to kind of get, because it suggested us that moving forward, Alicent and Otto are not going to be on the same page. And there's going to be this real push and pull as to how to best manipulate this king who cannot be manipulated. So it's like you already have Alicent versus Rhaenyra, or at least this side versus that side. But then you also have a battle within this side that could lead to this side ultimately losing.
That scene with Larys was really the part that just didn't feel like it fit.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that they wanted to push further this narrative that Alicent is manipulated by men. I understand that, but they've already set that up. We had seen that already, her being pulled in a bunch of different directions from, the king to her father to even her sons. Like, there was more than enough of that laid out that I just have a really hard time believing that she would allow something like that to happen in exchange of information for something that was, on the sexual side. It just doesn't fit with what she would do because of her dedication to her husband, because she did have a dedication to her husband. She knew that this was definitely crossing a line, and this was not the first time that this happened. You could see it immediately when he was kind of like just looking down. She's like, oh, fine, let me take off my socks, sort of thing. It was just like, okay, if it was left just at that, and then she didn't have to turn away while he touched himself, I was like, I don't see that happening with her.
No, it was not a great writing choice. Like, I think the information was valuable for Alicent to know, but the way in which we got to that point, it didn't make a lot of sense for this character, for this world that's set up. Yeah, Larys is shady and all of that, but what power does Larys really have at this point? Like, nobody's really, in my view, going to listen to Larys over Alicent with all of the, social structures that she has built. So that part didn't really work for me either.
No, there was a lot of other ways that they could trade information and that he could get some sort of a bit of power, which is seemingly what he was looking for. And having this sort of control over the queen is obviously a power, but it just didn't, I don't know, for whatever reason, it just felt like we took a huge curve for me.
I think overall, this was a very valuable episode in terms of like setting the table, getting us a good sense as to where the politics were. I could have taken another couple of big moments. Like the Rhaenys one is just really the only main one that's going to stick with me for quite some time.
That was a big moment that'll stick with me. Learning about Aegon and what he's into. That was a huge moment for me. Like I said, I went back into my mind being like, have I seen anything on this show? Like, I've seen a lot of dark stuff in the Game of Thrones universe, but have I seen anything as dark as that? I just don't know for myself.
I'm already trying to block it out, to be honest.
I mean, that was a huge moment to see that that's quite how dark it could be. And I mean, we've seen Joffrey, and he was really horrible as well, and has done a lot of like awful things. Like, oh man, we're in for a pretty bad reign here.
Yeah, and so I'm happy that next week, hopefully, we'll be taking a break from all of that, and we can.
Oh, I don't know.
We're gonna go and see our guy Damon, who
will be really mad.
Okay, yeah, he'll be really mad, and he'll probably do some really terrible things. But you know what? We tend to excuse a lot of the bad things that Damon has done in comparison to some other people.
Well, that's because he's complicated, and I think that's why a lot of us are Team Rhaenyra and Team Damon, because I mean, for me, I just don't think they're like all bad people. No. And I'll say that about Alicent too. I'm not necessarily Team Alicent, but I think a lot of the characters on the show, I've seen some people talking about where they're just like, I just can't really, it's hard to get into this show because everyone's so unlikable, to where I have to just be like, I just think these characters are complicated. I think it's no one's all bad or all good sort of thing, except for Aegon, who's just all bad. But like in general, they all sort of have different sides to them. And I think that's why it's easy to root for Damon.
Yeah. And I think it's just important to remember in general, it's okay to like a show where none of the leads are likable, like Succession, which we cover.
Or The Wire.
Yeah, or The White Lotus.
Love The Wire, and there's nobody's likable on that show.
Just give us compelling characters, and they have done that. And that's why, we're excited for the finale to see Rhaenyra and Daemon and setting the stage for what is going to be an absolute catastrophe of a season 2. But go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss our finale coverage. Check out our Instagram at Matt and Jess TV, and we'll see you here next time.